in our series on the book of Acts. If you want to pick up one of the copies of the book with the journal as well, please pick it up there on your way out. Some of you should have received the big Y, and I want you to have that as well here shortly. I'm thinking really about this book. Last week we talked about how action will move to new thoughts, okay? Not the other way around. We'll think ourselves into places it's going to be into the same rut. But if we can think actively into our lives like the Bible is really written for, we can actually find new ideas. It's not going to happen any other way. This is the most ancient way of using our brains that God has created, and you'll see that. That's what we did last week. So if you're not here, go back and check that on the live stream and see that. But today we're going to think about the sense of community. What in the world happened long ago that caused them to do things that they did? And ultimately, when I'm thinking about that, I was reminded of people that I don't understand. I'll show a picture here of somebody I don't understand. Now, the question that I'm asking right now is, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Seriously, are you thinking what I mean, when you look at this, I'm thinking, what are you thinking? And maybe they're just active. Maybe they're just doing and not thinking, and there's a downside of that, by the way. Stuff like this. But I'm looking at this thing and I'm wondering, are you thinking what I mean, the big question for me is why are they wearing helmets? Like, really? If anything happens, maybe you're a giant bowl at the bottom for the soup that you're going to be if you fall. I can just imagine some person, maybe somebody in our church is like this as well, who could gather a group of people together to do this ride, and they'll say to all of them, okay, young people, safety first, put on your helmets. No. So when I'm thinking about the thing I'm thinking about, the people that do this, they have the same mind. They are a group of people who have the same mind. Now, they might like metal music or symphony music, or they might like tacos instead of spaghetti. There's 100 different things that they have differences, opinions, politically, emotionally, religious things that they would believe. However, I challenge the religious part. But the one thing that they share is doing this. And the idea of that rises to the top of their list of things that's very important for them. You were to ask them, why in the world are you doing that? The why. They would give you an answer. If they don't, just test them, for drugs or other things like that. But there is a shared value, an idea that brings the sense of community in people like that. We do this all the time. We have gangs, they do this. The things that have the same mind is in gangs, or people who share hobbies, or even a group who are in recovery will come to a very simple room like in the FLC in our church, and they will gather no music, no entertainment. They come to the place and they support each other. They encourage each other. And the experience that they have around a table in recovery, the thing that they share is the most important thing for them in a week. So there are some things that are so important that unite us together. And so it's in the Bible, the phrase is being in one accord. We're not talking about an import car that's a mid-range in, from the lowest to the middle. The accord is not a car. It's a concept of having the word same mind. The same mind. When I was married for about a year and a half. We were done from college. We went to our first area. My wife was teaching. I was actually an evangelist for the first year. And it was amazing. I had all this room in my time to chase down my wife at the school. So I was always showing up to her classroom. Well, she was in another classroom one day, and I don't know if it's second grade or third or whatever, but she had a classroom, and I was in there for the lunch time, and I was sitting there in the back, like in an empty chair, watching the young people, all the lessons, they did the spelling, they did all the stuff that they were doing, and then it became time to do lunch. And they did lunch in their classroom. There's a problem with that. But back then, that's all they had. And so this group of students at the time of lunch, you can hear the energy in the room increase significantly. You can hear the sounds, and they start ripping over chips and bags and opening up things left and right. And there was one young person, red hair, like long curly hair, sitting in the second row, and I watched his appearance. He reached down to grab his lunch, and then he put his head back, and he didn't have to say it. He did it with his lips. He says, lunch. He forgot his lunch. He didn't have to say it. And then this very precocious girl on the other side of the classroom says, Gabriel didn't bring his lunch. And I thought, this is not a safe place at all. And I thought it was really critical of this little second or third grader. However, that's not a critic. It was an alarm. And it was like a bunch of ants. This one kid went to a metal cabinet, empty tray, and it was like a bunch of machines. Boom, ripped things. Everybody started to put things on the tray from their own lunch. Cheetos and cookies and parts of a sandwich. When I saw this tray go by me, I was the only one in the room that didn't contribute to this. Now, they looked at me and said, "What's wrong with you?" By the time to the second row, this was about 4 or 5 inches complete. And you could look at this. There were Cheetos and sandwiches and a lot of carrots and celery. A lot. So, we're just kids, right? But this thing was filled by the time to Gabriel, and it sat down, and it was like a mountain. He could eat this for 4 weeks. There was enough to survive if it didn't spoil. And I'm telling you, Cheetos, they don't spoil. In all of it, I looked at this and I thought, what just happened? What did I just witness? They were trained, but of course, they're second graders or third graders. But it's more important that they had the same mind. They argued about the songs that they were doing in the program for the music thing. Some of them did not like the songs, and they were just being cranky about it. The boys did not like the girls, and the girls did not like that. And there's always a giant fight. Whether it's time to do recess, we can go across to the park, or we go into the gym. That was a giant, you think about the political, attitudes of people in November in our country. It's worse in this group. There was just a fight. They had debates. They had placards. But they share the same mind. That creates a giant need in our world, in our lives. Yeah. I thought, what is their mission? What is their why in their classroom? And then they said, when anyone gets in trouble, we all help. That was the concept. That's the truth. If you were to use their mission statement, would that work? When everyone gets in trouble, we all help. I saw it also not with lunch, but in math. The multiplication tables, if they didn't get it, they would help each other. This was a remarkable classroom. And it taught me what I had been trained to talk about for what? What did I do? I crammed 4 years of college into about 6. And in all of that, I learned a PhD in that one classroom of community. Differences were not going to change in some ways, but the one thing they do is they share one mind. So when we peel back the book of Acts a little bit, you'll see this shared mind. And how did they get that? Go back and think about this group and just a little bit of a review. The disciples, one by one, individually, picked to follow Jesus. It wasn't a convention. It was Jesus reaching out to Mary. And she followed and became really, essentially, the first disciple. And then we know Matthew and Peter and John and James, all of them came one at a time, individually, to make that decision. And then this group were moving through life with Jesus for 3 years. And then whether their expectations are right or wrong, they were surprised to find their Messiah died. But then 2 days later, what happens? The resurrection. And so now, on the road and in the moment of the resurrection, in those 40, 50 days afterwards, things started to fall in place. Not just in their minds, but history. Everything from Genesis now makes sense. It started to create a sense of like-mindedness in a group of people. And it wasn't a large group. It was the same group that's the same size that's in this building today, just like us. And in that place, in Pentecost, on that day, and some people say, finally they prayed faithfully and Jesus showed up. No, it's not about the Holy Spirit is going to pull down in from heaven. Pentecost happened on time. It was scheduled in heaven that this is happening. And if people are there, they were witness of this, to invite this. But we don't go up and say, heaven, we're ready now, by our faithfulness. God is going to do his work on time, and it happened. And so now we have this group of people who are functioning in such a way that's, well, let's take a look. Let's go to our text today in Acts chapter 2 and see what it looks like. In verse 42, it says, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and the breaking of bread and to prayer. And I'm telling you, I'm in a room of seminarians and pastors and preachers who hear a passage like that. What do they see? They 4 things that we can change the world with, right? Look at it. What are the 4? You can actually teach, fellowship, breaking bread, and prayer. Those are the 4 things. And friends, right now we're going to sign up for all of these things to do, right? And you can imagine a whole bunch of them that gets really, they'll foam in the mouth at something like this, because now we have this program that you can actually do and ensures great growth, right? I'm sorry, I've been in the room with those moments, and maybe I spent many years thinking like, let's find a strategy to allow this great gospel of Jesus to go into the world. Has it happened? Not like we thought. It still happens one by one. So these are actually prayer and breaking bread and fellowship and teaching. These are byproducts. These are activities that you do, and then when you do that, you'll have a byproduct at the end. But I want to move from the consumer mode or the cause and effect mode for a second. And I don't want to miss the one thing I missed for 15 years as a pastor. I went to the activity, the things to do, the things that we can market, the things that we can develop, the things that we can require, the things that we can put resources for. And I forgot and never saw what might be so obvious for you. So we'll get to the other stuff, the important things, surely. But there are 2 words that are important to me. Those 2 words, they devoted themselves. This is the central, singular thing that individuals do to give access to God's power to be released in your lives. You devote yourselves. This is an individual thing. The first thing I want to talk about is the devotion. I used to think about that word devoted, and I had to go back to Olivia Newton and that song, because I was so in love with that woman. I thought maybe she was singing to me in my mind. Didn't really play out the way I imagined it. So devoted to you. And I'm thinking about the word devotion. And then I have written at least 4 or 5 books called devotions, a devotional book. And then sometimes they want you to do it so you can do it in 5 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever. These pieces of time. So if you have devotions, that means you had a piece of time that you're going to dedicate it to God. 5 minutes, 15 minutes. Some of you think you're so spiritual if you do 45 minutes of devotions. But I'm here to say that's been a problem. To put this concept of devotion into a time, a place, a box, an area in your schedule. I would say this: devotions or devotion, what would you have? When you get married, you don't go and say, all right, 4 to 6, I'm devoted to you. At that time, those are my devotions. Those my vow. Does it work that way? You know it. You know what devotion looks like in a person's life. Devotion. It's that one single thing that you will put at the first thing that you'll do, no matter what. The things that you don't really compromise. I mean, you'll let other things go, but you know what it looks like to see devotion. So here's my question. What are you devoted to? Clearly, if you're connected to a family, you have devotion to family. Biologically, you almost have to, right? However, for time, there's something so beautiful about family is you learn to love. Through time, you don't see the difference. You are devoted to your family. So look at that word devotion and think about what it means to that whole book of Acts and the concept of church long ago, but then think about it today. Our devotion. You can tell about who you are by your sense of devotion, can you? The kind of person that you are, what you will make sure. And it doesn't matter how good you are with marketing or talking things about things that are really important, what you really do first, most, and best. Those are the things that define your real why. So, in this whole effect that happened long ago with crazy growth and amazing miracles, how did it happen? People devoted themselves. It was a personal, individual thing. There is no we until there's a you who's going to say yes in any relationships. You must at some point say, and I don't care if you're 3, 13, or 65, or 92, you still, no matter what, have to answer the question, what about you and your Lord? What do you say about Christ? Not us or me and my wife. It's always going to start with you. Secondly, the thems, the second part. When we look at all of the things that we decide to do, we can, I think, what we call lip sync church life. You know, you can get together and show up. If you show up occasionally, it's normal because we have schedules, we have vacations, we have lots of things. Showing up once a week is not the mark of a community of faith. So for me, like, that's secondary. There's something even deeper that we have to think about, is that single-minded decision about what I'm going to do with me and God and what you are going to do. There's this story about of an orchestra, and they're practicing, and they're getting ready for a performance, and the piccolo is a beautiful instrument, but not always the loudest piece or part of this. At one point, the piccolo just decided not to play. And it took a couple measures, but the director stopped, click, 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 hold on, and then started to scan and going, where's the piccolo? Well, most people never would hear the piccolo, but it was the director heard it, noticed. But if that individual doesn't play, it changes the sound. The same thing in a choir. What if everybody in choir, like I was in a choir that had like 3 people can sing and the rest of us could not. And it was like we're all faking it half the time, and we had 3 people singing, but they had 40 people up there going. And some of us has the the emotions too. We did drama classes, so we could actually fake it. Now, I think sometimes that shows when the sound and the voice shows up. What I'm saying is that whatever happened in the book of Acts, it starts with this impulse. They devoted themselves. And when I go into the next part of this, I have to ask the question, why are they there? Why were they gathering and devoting themselves? What is their why? And you have this little card. Some of you have this, and if you don't, I want you to grab one. This is not a decision card or anything like that. This is for information. Because as a church, we need to know, and we all can't talk at the same time right now. And some of you are in small groups. You meet, you have lunch, you do this, you work together, you serve together. And all of that, I want to ask a question to all of us. Why are you a believer? And you can answer several different questions because it's going to be in the same artery of thought, okay? I want to ask the question, why are you here? What is this? I mean, because really, there's a lot of good things that you can do on a Sabbath morning, right? And then there are good things that are like for being a good citizen, but at some point, why would you show up? Why are you a part of it? What is your why? What is the thing that you really believe, right? And it could be a whole random things there. It's never going to be one thing. It's going to be several, probably. I am here because at one moment in my life, my dad told me, taught us, invited us to Jesus, the story, the Bible, this whole giant story, and I believed it. I fell in love later in life as a disciple of Jesus. And it's his cross and his resurrection and the fact that he's promised to come back is the one thing that's driving my feet into a place like this. Why are you here? What is your why? I want to know what that is, and you don't have to put your name on it. We'll share the whole to all. But in the box in the back, the big Bible in the back, or in the basket out there, if you want to do that, if you want to take this for a week and think about it too, do that. Take it with you. Bring it back next week. But I want to know your why. Read the rest of the passages of this community of faith, okay? Here it is. Everyone, as a result of those 4 simple things that they did, everyone was filled with awe and the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. And it doesn't mean they all agreed about everything, but they had a single mind. They said, they sold their property and they have their possessions, and they brought it together as people who had need. Now, normally I ask students to count all of the superlatives in this section. You can, right? I'll give you a mango if you do. I was going to give a donut, but no, we're in the season now. We need a mango. But I want you to look for the superlatives in this. Everyone, all the believers, everything in common, anyone who had a need. Look at the next passage. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and they ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of what? Yeah. Have mercy. And all of that, I look at that and I think, I want to explore that. And some people will say, all right, church, it's not for me. I don't like their music. I don't like the people, they talk, they said something, my shoes. Yeah. I hate to say this. Get over our differences and get over it soon. The like-minded moments that we have will give us the courage to do the hardest things that we'll ever see. And I do believe Jesus is coming again. And this is not just a club. There are better clubs than this. This is a singular, minded place. And I'm reminded about one person in closing. Her name is Merope Jika. It was about in the 40s that Daniel Lewis, the Seventh-day Adventist missionary, got into Albania for the first time. It's a communist regime at that time. And Daniel Lewis had Bible studies with people, one at a time. And Merope Jika is one of those first Bible studies. She fell in love with Jesus. But then Daniel Lewis was arrested and is in prison. And in prison, if you're going to survive, you have to have people who are going to support you. It's not the state or the Fed that's going to take care of you. They said, you're on your own in your prison cell. So people had to bring things to feed him. Merope would bring clothes and food every day. She fell in love with Jesus. This is in the 40s. How many years? Remember when communists fell in that area, the wall came down? Was it 40, 50 years almost? I was in college, and I remember this happened. When the wall came down, she was there for 50 years, waiting for a like-minded community of faith. You know, she had several dreams. One, that she would be a part of a community of faith. She saved her money for 50 years. Now, as a conference treasurer or anyone like that, they said, wow, I like people like that. She had a box of cash to start a church. The first Seventh-day Adventist church in Albania came out of her little cardboard boxes for 50 years. So she wanted to give her tithe and offerings to a church. She wanted to be baptized for 50 years. At the age of 97, she was baptized. She died recently afterwards. She never saw the building of the first Adventist church in Albania. But I'm telling you, her story is not just their story, but it's also our story, isn't it? One person devotes themselves to the cause. You'll see what will happen.